On today's Locked On NBA Game Night podcast, teams are always going to disappoint, and there's a couple in the West in particular that you need to hammer the under on today's show.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Let's get it going on Locked On NBA Game Night. I'm Rylan, Stiles, host of Locked On Thunder. That's Gavin, Schall, host of Locked On Knicks. We're here for you every Saturday to break down the NBA and all around the league with news, notes, and of course, the recap of every game. But since we're in the off season, we do have a topic for today, which is going to mirror a topic we did a couple weeks ago. Where a couple weeks ago, we told you who we thought would overachieve in the NBA compared to their FanDuel win totals. Today, we tell you who you should take the under on their FanDuel win totals. Gavin, how are you doing today as we get closer? There's the light at the end of the tunnel. Training camp is right there. Preseason's right there. It's almost back.
You know what, man? It's been good. I was in Hawaii the last 2 weeks. I appreciate you covering for me. I come back. We do a thrilling crossover. The Knicks add Landry Shamet, Malcolm Brogdon, Garrison Matthews. So it has been thrilling over here at Locked On Knicks. But I'm excited to be back with you on Saturdays, and I'm incredibly excited to have NBA basketball back in my life.
So, whenever we do clean up some news and notes around the league, the Knicks did add into their depth. As Shams puts out there, that Landry Shamet is back. Malcolm Brogdon is in New York. They also have a brand new coach, in case you haven't heard. I mean, Mike Brown instead of Tom Thibodeau. So with your NBA and Knicks expertise, what will be different this season about New York's depth? Obviously, the names are just a tad different, but also, do you assume the philosophy will be different with them wanting to go into their bench deeper than Tom Thibodeau did?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've telegraphed that that's going to be a thing. Like, I don't see why Gershon Yabusele takes less money to come here. I don't see why Jordan Clarkson accepts like a veteran's minimum. Malcolm Brogdon, who it's still not a guarantee that both him and Landry Shamet will make the team. The Knicks, for that to work from a cap perspective, are going to have to trade away someone else on this team. Most people presume it'll be one of Tyler Kolek or Pacome Dadier. We'll see who that ultimately is. But if Malcolm Brogdon's on this roster, he's presumably going to play. And all of a sudden, you're looking like, even before you get to like Landry Shamet and those second-year guys that are somewhat intriguing for New York, you have a 10-man rotation at a minimum. And the minutes get really hard to distribute when your top five is as good as the top five that the Knicks are. And all of a sudden, they're going from this team that had three guys in the top 10 in the NBA in minutes, I believe the top two in Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart on the entire season. You're looking at a team that's going to be closer to your Thunder or closer to our buddy Danny Cunningham's Cleveland Cavaliers, and maybe not play anyone over. I mean, the Cavs were crazy, right? I think Donovan Mitchell led the team, at 32 and a half minutes per game. I would imagine Jalen Brunson still around 34. I can't see Cat playing under 32. But other than that, maybe just a bunch of guys playing between like 14 to 30 minutes a game. They go from this team that struggled with their depth and I think was really reliant on the fact that they were maybe like unrealistically healthy. I don't even know a better way to phrase it. They just had incredible injury luck last year. OG Anunoby played the most games he played since his rookie year while averaging a career high minutes. Karl Anthony Towns played the most games he's played in the last 5 years. Mikal Bridges has continued to just not miss a game since high school. Assuming some of that luck bounces back, I don't know if it'll like have quite the aggregate impact on the Knicks regular season win total. I think the biggest thing about this is like it won't harm the Knicks as much if their injury luck is a little bit worse. This depth is real. And these are guys that could all potentially see times in the playoffs. Like I think Malcolm Brogdon is a playoff rotation guy. I think Gershon Yabusele is certainly a playoff rotation guy. Jordan Clarkson in the right matchup is someone who's going to see significant time in the playoffs. And it gives the Knicks a lot more optionality. They could still use a little bit more wing depth, but it feels like their philosophy has been, regardless of position, regardless of size, let's just get the best players available. And because of that, the Knicks have gone from a team that could really only confidently play 7 guys in the postseason last year to I think this is legitimately 10 deep team now.
Yeah, and whenever you look at this Knicks team, I think that that's the way, right? I mean, whenever you look at, you mentioned Cleveland, you mentioned Oklahoma City. They, of course, had the most regular season success. I mean, Oklahoma City was number one in the NBA, Cleveland number one in the East in the regular season. But even on down to like the Pacers, like these teams that make deep playoff runs have been able to have optionality with their rosters throughout the regular season and the postseason
Mm.
because you're going to need to turn to guys eventually at some point in a series or in a game that can flip it for you. And different matchups bring in different strengths and weaknesses, which of course every player has those different strengths and weaknesses that you want on the court. So I think this is a great decision by New York. I'm very curious, like you mentioned, how do they bring in Brogdon? Because I don't know that you would bring him in and then not actually have him on the opening night roster. So how are you going to trade Kolek, or how are you going to trade someone on this roster to make room for him? I think it should be pretty easy though. Like, I mean, the value is not going to net you back something incredible, but you can also sell teams on the fact that there's like a ton of upside left there because they just haven't played a ton.
Mhm.
Maybe you can get a couple seconds or something, and that's still valuable in the sense of swapping them out to bring Brogdon in, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, the Knicks were really high on Tyler Kolek. I think when they drafted him, they gave him the richest contract for a second round pick ever. Pacom Dadi is much younger. He's someone who's shown a lot of flashes. Personally, he's the one of the two I would lean towards not trading. But because of their respective contracts, Pacom opens up like far more roster flexibility for the rest of the season. Like if they trade Kolek, the Knicks are basically do not have an ability. I think this was according to I'm sorry, I don't know how to say his first name, but I think it's Yossi Gonzalez, who does incredible cap work over Third Apron. The Knicks can't bring in a 15th guy until April 2nd if they ultimately trade Kolek. So it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to maintain like any kind of maneuverability. Like this is like as per usual, like just incredible cap work from Brock Aller, their lead capologist, to even make this feasible. I'm fascinated to see who ultimately moves on. It's possible the Knicks really surprise people, and instead there's like a Mitchell Robinson trade brewing, or Deuce McBride trade brewing. Like we saw last year, the Knicks right before training camp make a Karl Anthony Towns deal. Like this is kind of how they've operated under Leon Rose, getting the tail end of their business done very, very late in the summer. But I do think just from a basketball perspective, it's worth it for the Knicks, right? Jalen Brunson, smack dab in the middle of his prime. You kind of have a unique window in the Eastern Conference this year with Jason Tatum out, with Tyrese Halliburton out, that you might not have again as a Knicks fan, and I mean as this Knicks front office. And they knew they needed just more ball handling, more shot creation. And they weren't going to find that at like the higher tiers because they're already paying OG Anunoby a ton of money, Karl Anthony Towns a ton of money, Mikal Bridges a ton of money, all as guys that are not really great creators for others. So you get it from your bench, right? You get Jordan Clarkson, who's like capable of making like a live dribble, one-handed like whip 30 feet across the court. Malcolm Brogdon, who's not great at that, but like is like a pretty high level playmaker, right? I think above 90th percentile in assist percentage. And the Knicks at a real budget have found some like genuine playoff level creation. Like both those guys have their respective drawbacks. They're certainly not good defenders at this point in their respective careers. And yet, like if the Knicks closed a playoff game with Brogdon, would like next to Jalen Brunson, would anyone be totally shocked by that? There's a world where like if he comes in, he's in great shape. Like he could be their fifth starter as someone they sign right at the tail end of the offseason. Like I just think this is really, really good work from the Knicks front office.
And the last news and notes around the league, as we're still trickling in some news in the offseason, the Washington Wizards announced that Blake Lubale underwent surgery on Friday to repair a ligament tear in his thumb. He'll likely miss time into the regular season. Lubale, of course, sustained the injury with the French national team during the FIBA Eurobasket competition. So hopefully, whenever he misses time into the regular season, as the wording suggests, hopefully it's not too much time for him, because this Wizards team, I think, will be very elevated up the NBA League Pass rankings, because they're not going to have a ton of national TV games. They're going to be on League Pass a lot, and they're a very fun young core. And Coulibaly, of course, is in that mix. Trying to see where he solidifies himself as a player will be fun. But coming up, Gavin, which teams are we out on? Which teams do you need to hit the under on their FanDuel over-under, all coming up? But first, I want to say right now, but good friends over at Monarch Money, go check out Monarch Money today, because Monarch Money is incredible. Most people, they can't even name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth. 1Ks, properties, investments, when you don't have the full picture, you end up leaving money on the table. That's why Monarch Money is there for you with an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface. On your laptop, on your phone, Monarch is built for people with busy lives. They're going to help you organize your finances. It allows you to see everything with a very smart categorization and data visuals that make sure you have the full control over your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. They do the heavy lifting for you to link your accounts in minutes. I love that data visualization. I love the fact that I can see exactly what I'm spending per month on streaming services and subscription services, and really can sift through which ones are losing me money, which ones do I not use, which ones can I give up, and which ones do I need to keep. So make sure you check it out today at Monarch Money. Do not let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA. We're back on the Locked On NBA Game Night Podcast. I'm Rylan Stiles. Alongside me is Gavin Schall. And Gavin, we've already done our teams to hit the over on, teams we're very excited about. What teams are we entering this training camp in this preseason looking at that under button on FanDuel? All odds, of course, brought to you by FanDuel, and just not really expecting them to have a ton to say in the win category this season.
All right, so this draft, at least on my end, is going to be very Western Conference heavy because I think we're both in agreement. It's far and away that I concede to you the superior conference. But my first pick comes from the East. The Toronto Raptors have an over-under of 38.5 that I don't see it happening. Maybe I'm completely misreading this team, but I think the starting lineup, Rylan, makes zero sense as currently constituted, right? We're looking at Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Jakob Poeltl, right? Just like three guys. I mean, really, like Quickley can play off the ball just because he's a good enough shooter, but that's four guys who would ideally have the ball in their hands a lot. And look, maybe there's a world where, and this is a conversation we had on Locked On Knicks for years and years and years, where RJ Barrett decides to accept being a sixth man, or Toronto makes that decision for him and RJ Barrett is forced to be a sixth man and you start Grady Dick, or you get some more shooting from someone like Ochai Agbaji coming in that starting lineup. And then I think you can kind of talk yourself into this team making a little bit more sense. But again, it's just a bunch of ball dominant guys, not really enough tertiary shooting. I'm a big Jakob Poeltl guy. Emmanuel Quickley never seems to be healthy, but he remains, again, there's some Knicks bias in there, but one of my favorite players in the NBA. Brandon Ingram, like it has been a while since we've seen him really contribute to winning basketball. Certainly has had some moments in the playoffs, particularly in that series against the Suns. I think, what was that, 2021, 2022? But I just don't really see, I don't see the vision. I don't see this team coming together. They have the 18th hardest schedule in the NBA, which obviously is below average, but for the East is actually above average. They won just 25 games last year. They should be a lot healthier, right? All five of their projected starters last season played 65 or less games. So that's certainly a reason for optimism, a reason why they should win more games. I don't really see what this team does that's great on either end of the floor. So I struggle to see why they're close to 500.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. They were on my big board as well when going through these numbers and seeing which ones jumped out. And look, it's really tough to even do the under compared to the over for me, because the numbers are a little conservative right now of just where they place them. So it's just easier to talk yourself into the over than it is to talk yourself into the under. So these are all going to be, for me at least, very small margin of error, if you will, when picking these unders. But the Toronto Raptors, though, I just do not get how the line is set that high. I think that that's a little bit inflated by just the fact that, technically speaking, I think that anyone in the East can beat anybody on any given night, especially once you get past the top four. So then that kind of artificially puts their win total higher. I was looking at the team that I really wanted to circle whenever I was just heading into this blind was the New Orleans Pelicans, because I'm out on the New Orleans Pelicans, and their win total is only 29.5 a game. So they just have to win 30 games and they will be clear of the over. However, last year they won 21. I did not like their offseason process at all as a team. And they kind of fall into that category to me of the 76ers, of like, you can't trust them to stay healthy. There's always something that's happening with New Orleans. And when there's always something that's happening with New Orleans, you've got to just be able to win games in the West without, presumably, your best talent available, which it never is for New Orleans. I don't think that that's going to be possible for them. I think that that's going to be how cutthroat this league is. Now, this is a bet on the West not only being the more talented league and the better league, but a bet on the West having their top teams like Denver, like Houston, take the regular season seriously and actually, compete every single night in the regular season. I think it's going to happen, though. I'm going to take the under on the New Orleans Pelicans. And that seems a little harsh, but I mean, we got to pick somebody.
It's not harsh to me. They were third on my big board. We've talked about it various times this offseason. This team makes zero sense to me. And that is assuming, like, even in a world where Zion plays 60 games, which is a long shot, right?
Yeah,
I believe he's only done that once in his NBA career so far. Even if he does, like, I still don't think they make a whole lot of sense. Like, here's how I have their rotation. I have Jordan Poole, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Zion, Yves Missi as their starting center. The bench, Jose Alvarado, Jeremiah Fears, Jordan Hawkins, Sadiq Bey, Derek Queen. And that's my tentative first look at it. I know they have a bunch of dudes, so it's a little hard figuring out who's ultimately going to play for them. I think they're going to be really fun to watch. Like, offensively, that first five could be exhilarating. Like, I'm up for a Jordan Poole, Zion pick and roll. Trey Murphy made a big leap last year. I've always really liked him as a player. Herb Jones is someone who's actually gotten, like, at least according to some of the advanced analytics, like, worse every year defensively. So I'd be interested in seeing a bounce back season from him. That's something that could help elevate them. I don't see where the spacing really is on this team, right? In the starting lineup, it's good enough, right? Herb's a decent shooter. Poole's like a B+ shooter. Trey's an A- shooter. Like, but Zion and Missi don't really make sense together. Zion and Derek Queen, we talked about this when they drafted Derek Queen and traded a pick to draft Derek Queen, don't really make any sense together from a spacing perspective. Defensively, I just think this team is a mess, right? Like, in that rotation, outside of Herb and Trey, do you see an above average defender in there? Jose Alvarado, certainly, right? Like, the Alvarado steal, those are thrilling. But in terms of this team defending every single night, like, I don't think they're big enough. I don't think they're athletic enough. I don't think they're coherent enough. I don't really see in just a killer Western Conference. I think this team is going to get steamrolled by the Nuggets, by the Rockets, by the Thunder. Like, it is going to be such a rare occasion where they pull off an upset over the better teams in the league. And then even some of the worst teams just might have a more coherent identity. And even if the Pelicans have more talent, they should be able to beat them. So I'm with you. I don't really see, I mean, there's a path, but I think it's unlikely the Pelicans surpass 29 wins next season.
Yeah, and part of it too is just the formula of, if you're trying to play out these wins. Well, obviously there's certain teams where you think that New Orleans is overmatched and they just can't win. Even against teams like who are maybe 5th through 11th in the West, who are just all jockeying for playoff positioning. The 11th team trying to get into the play-in, the play-in team trying to get up to the top 6, etc. Like, every game is going to matter, to the point of, you saw it last year. How razor thin was the margin between the difference in the 3 seed and the 6 seed, the difference in the 7th seed and the 9th seed and the 7th seed and getting all the way into the 3 seed, right? I mean, that was a close gap for Golden State to almost jump all the way out of the play-in tournament. So all these games are still going to matter at the end of the season, and they're going to matter a lot more for New Orleans' opponent, at least every night, except for against Utah and against maybe one other team, but probably just Utah, honestly, is the only team where it won't matter more for them than New Orleans. So I just think that New Orleans is fighting a really uphill battle this season. We did not like their offseason. Still don't like this team for them that they've constructed, but I'm going to have to take the under here.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. But that leaves the second team on my board. They are essentially across the street from me, the Phoenix Suns, I'm going under 31.5 for them. Third hardest schedule. Oh, by the way, we didn't even mention this to the Pelicans. 4th hardest schedule in the NBA. And basically, inherently, if you are a bad team in the Western Conference, you're going to have one of the hardest schedules in the NBA, because you play the majority of your games against the West and you don't get to play yourself. So that makes things difficult. The Pelicans' 4th hardest schedule in the NBA. The Phoenix Suns, according to Tankathon, third hardest schedule in the NBA. Rylan, this team does not, outside of Colin Gillespie, who did play minutes at times last year for the Suns, do not really have a point guard in their rotation, right? We've heard at various times this offseason it's going to be Devin Booker at point guard. It's going to be Jalen Green at point guard. I'm terrified of what that looks like. The rest of their starting lineup I have is Royce O'Neal, Dillon Brooks, Mark Williams, likely bench Gillespie, Grayson Allen, Ryan Dunn, Oso Ighodaro, Nick Richards. This team was bad last year, and they turned Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal into Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, Mark Williams, who it should be noted, the Suns last season, I think, played one of the worst center rotations I've seen in the NBA in the last 10 years. Mark Williams, like whatever his flaws are, like, and maybe it'll just be staying on the court, is inherently just a massive, massive upgrade over that. So if you want to offset some of the fact that they lost KD, a guy at Locked On we had as still a top 12 player in the NBA, I think Mark Williams does some of that for you. I'm not a Jalen Green guy. I know you're not a Jalen Green guy. Maybe he puts it all together this year. I think the best way to describe him early in his career has largely been inefficient gunner, and with more ball handling, with more pressure to perform than even he had in Houston, maybe a little bit better spacing around him. So that'll be an upshot. Devin Booker's the best offensive player he's ever played next to. So that'll be an upshot. But I still think his circumstances are arguably like the same or harder. So I don't really see where he makes a major leap. Booker at times last year was really frustrated being the primary ball handler for this team. Like I went to a lot of Suns games last year, Ryan. The second he crosses half court, and this is with Kevin Durant on the team, this is with Bradley Beal on the floor, he's getting blitzed every single time. I don't see a world where that doesn't happen next year. And then this bench, like there is just like Grayson Allen's a great shooter. Ryan Dunn is a promising young defender. Ighodaro's an amazing athlete. This is one of the worst benches in the NBA, and I don't think it's particularly close. 31.5, I think, is giving a lot of credit to just the fact that Devin Booker is incredible, but third option, Dillon Brooks, fourth option, Royce O'Neal. I don't think this is a good basketball team.
It's hard to disagree with any of that because the Suns are going to be fighting that uphill battle in the West. So that's why we've been talking about the Western Conference is the conference to hit if you want to take some teams unders heading into this season. Coming up, let's go through our draft. My next pick will still stay in the West, but I'm contemplating an Eastern Conference team. We'll debate that coming up. We're back talking to you about our good friends over at FanDuel. Make sure you go check out today FanDuel because the NFL season's here, and FanDuel is making sure that you are ready for kickoff with can't-miss offers. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. That's a first $5 bet if you're a new customer, and you get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins to use across the app. So make sure you go download the FanDuel app or visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. The NFL season, of course, very fun. It is here. Make sure you check them out today, but clearly you can still bet on the NBA as we're doing right now with our Over Under podcast episode. So you can go check that out at the NBA tab if that's all you're really into. But if you are into the NFL, what a loaded slate it is this week. You have the Giants and the Cowboys. Giants 4.5-point underdogs. You also can keep on looking at the Chiefs and the Eagles. Chiefs 1.5-point underdogs in Arrowhead against the Eagles in the Super Bowl rematch. Go check it out today at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast, wrapping up today's show, Gavin, by continuing our over-unders. My next pick, I'm really deciding between two teams, and I personally have to go with the Western Conference team because my Eastern Conference team is the Philadelphia 76ers, and my personal bias with the 76ers. I've been here at Locked On since May of 2020. I've never picked Philadelphia to finish lower than the 3 seed in the East. I've been all in on Philadelphia. Now, I will say from a purely betting perspective, and you take your emotional bias out of it for betting, 42.5, man. Like that can easily hit the under if knock on wood and hope it doesn't, things go the way they have been on the injury report for Philadelphia. But I'm not going to draft for the Sixers because in my heart of hearts, when I look at this team, I still think that they're a team that in the Eastern Conference playing that schedule, as long as they can avoid the injury bug, finally, like they're better than 42.5 wins. So I'm not going to select them. I will, however, echo your sentiments about the Suns. I think that that's a really good call because I'm looking at teams where who is going to be left out? Who's going to be disappointed in a play-in situation? And to me, the only teams that I think are just discarded right now are New Orleans and Utah, and then I would discard Phoenix, and it sounds like you would too. But that leaves San Antonio and Portland last year's 12 and 13 seeds who are trying to get into the top 10 for the postseason, while the last season's top 10 trying to hold on, trying to stay in that range. And I look at the Sacramento Kings. 34 and a half wins is their over under. That they won 40 games last year, and they also had to deal with some midseason trades, giving Fox to San Antonio, getting Zach LaVine, and kind of putting this team together. To me, this roster is just not inspiring at all. And I will probably be wrong about this because they do have a lot of good floor raisers. They don't have a lot of good ceiling raisers, but like Sabonis and LaVine and DeRozan, that can raise your regular season floor a whole lot. I just question their depth. I question their longevity. In this 82 game season, when we're talking about how competitive these games are going to be, like how many can this trio really gut out? And I question their true playmaking instead of just individualized scoring, because I think that Sabonis is your best and really only playmaker on this team in terms of a passing sense and setting up his teammates sense for this roster. I question their depth. I question like what's the real Keegan Murray? What's the real Devin Carter? Now, of course, Devin Carter a little bit more unfair than that because he did get hurt and had to battle through that his first season. But like I was really high on Devin Carter, and of course after his rookie season we're really high on Keegan Murray. Like, where do they level off at? I'm still in kind of limbo with a lot of their prospects. And so I just think that there's a lot to figure out with little time because a slow start in the West buries you. And I just think that you can take the under on Sacramento and at least feel pretty good considering their schedule and their conference.
They were the next team up on my board. So
there we go.
I agree with you. And I think we think about this in a similar way, right? Teams that lack shooting, lack playmaking, questionable defense, I think is the themes of all these teams. And of course, this is challenging because that is inherently baked into their over-under win total. But maybe you and I just value that a little bit disproportionately. They have the 8th hardest schedule in the NBA, according to Tankathon this year. Something in favor of them going over. They played, according to my math, at a 37-win pace. Post De'Aaron Fox trade, essentially bring back the same team they had last year. They add Nick Clifford as a rookie who had an incredible showing in Summer League, I believe, unless I was missing someone on the roster. Matt George, correct me if often, I believe Maxime Reynaud, their center out of Stanford, who also looked really good in Summer League, is going to be the backup 5. I think they are just completely screwed if Domantas Sabonis misses any substantial amount of time. You still have to, it's still a challenge to construct a above average defense, even though Mike Brown did it at times with Sabonis at center. I'm happy that Keon Ellis should pretty clearly have a bigger role. I still don't know if we know what this team actually looks like going into next year, because there have been rumors all summer that they want to bring in Russell Westbrook, that Russell Westbrook seemingly wants to go there, that they wanted to move Malik Monk for Jonathan Kuminga, but none of that stuff has happened yet. And to your point, like just having all three of LaVine, DeRozan, and Monk on the roster, I mean, it's a very similar issue to what they had last year, where those are all like nominally shoot first guys. I do think Monk has a little bit more to his game. I think he is, in some ways, that secondary shot creator behind Domantas Sabonis. Obviously, LaVine can give you a little bit of that. DeRozan can give you a little bit of that. We've just had so many years now of that LaVine DeRozan duo. Yeah. And with DeRozan like well into his mid-30s now, I don't think we're ever getting better results than that. It looked really good when you had Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball next to them. Unfortunately, like the Kings don't really have quite that same setup and infrastructure. If there is a year 4 now leap in there for Keegan Murray, maybe that changes things. He's obviously very solid, to your point, as a 3-and-D guy. It's so similar to a bunch of the other teams we talked about, where you can talk yourself into the individual pieces as a coherent product. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. The West is completely loaded. I'm not really optimistic about them going above 34.5. But honestly, a team I had lower, but I might even be more confident in this pick, Rylan, is the San Antonio Spurs, under 44.5, 5th hardest schedule in the NBA, according to Tankathon. And this one is hard to do because, like everyone who covers the NBA, I'm in on Victor Wembanyama. He came in 6th in our Locked On Top 100. I had him a few spots lower. Point is, like, you have a top 10 player in the league. You have a top 35 player in the league, according to our Locked On hosts in De'Aaron Fox. There is not another top 100 guy on this roster. And look, if Wemby, and we've discussed this over the offseason, right? A couple episodes back for us. If Wemby makes a leap and all of a sudden is putting up 32, 12, and 5 blocks per game and is the best or co-best player in the NBA, when Nikola Jokic, maybe this doesn't matter. And he's just so incredibly dominant that he can lift up the rest of this roster. But I think San Antonio, it's so interesting evaluating their front office because I think they've done an exceptionally good job in terms of asset management, asset acquisition, but they have not really done a great job, in my mind, in building an ideal team around Victor Wembanyama. Again, I don't think there's quite enough shooting here. I think the Castle, Fox, Harper trio as their backcourt depth doesn't make a ton of sense because none of those guys are great shooters. I do expect Fox to have a bounce back season shooting the ball, given that he won't be dealing with the wrist injury this time around. And yet I just come back to the idea that this team, like, there's not really a coherent vision here in terms of how they want to play around Victor Wembanyama. It is possible that, like, heading into his second year, it's oh my God, this is a real brain fart for me. Mitch Johnson, right? Spurs head coach. He is, I think it is going to help him a lot, like having a full offseason. Like he was thrown into the fire last year, didn't really have a full chance to put a plan together. And yet I am of the opinion that this roster, again, like, I like that they brought in Luke Cornett. I like Jeremy Sohan off the bench. Keldon Johnson obviously is a proven scorer off the bench. Like, I don't know if I think it's a little less than the sum of its parts, much like so many of these other teams we've talked about.
Yeah, it's a good place to end because I think that a lot of us just kind of pencil in the Spurs for this play-in run, and it's twofold, really. The play-in run this season could look a lot different than in years past, where, like, it's a lower win total that you need to get to because of how competitive and how balanced the Western Conference is. That's one of it. But the second of it is, if you're just thinking about this from a pure, like, okay, where can we be right about the overs and the unders? The Spurs would have to take an 11-game leap in the win column to hit this over. And did they get 11 wins better this offseason? Or do they just incrementally improve and they're on the right track and they're feeling good about themselves? And I think that there is also a negative connotation of, like, taking the under. Like, the Spurs can both show improvement this season and can show that they're heading in the right direction and also hit their under on the win total, I think. And so I do think that that's a good one to point out. And I think that that one is a little bit juiced up because, like, they've gotten to that point where there is a market for people betting on Wemby. There's a market for people betting on the Spurs, is like wanting to get in on the cutting edge of, like, a team that you think could erupt. I would not hit their under. I would probably just stay away, honestly, from the Spurs. But I do like this because of the flaws of their roster that you mentioned with shooting and with their messy guard rotation. What if that takes 3 weeks to figure out? And that sounds silly, right? It's an 82-game season, 3 weeks. But 3 weeks in this conference, man, it could be the difference in what you do. I think that we put way too much value on what happens in April. Like, the games in October matter the same. And whenever there's only a 1-game difference between if you make the play-in or don't, or a half-game difference if you make the play-in or the playoffs, like, it can be made up in October. And if they get off to a slow start, trying to feel some things out, it could be messy for them. But this has been a lot of fun. We'll be back next week as we get closer and closer to training camp. We'll have storylines to watch for at Media Day. We'll have storylines to watch for at training camp and preseason, all coming up, Gavin. This has been fun again. Until next time, be good and be good to one another.